Hi everyone! Today I'd like to take you along with me as I create a Christmas wreath. I'm going to give you a few tips on creating a wreath of your own and tell you a few stories about how Christmas wreaths became a tradition that everyone takes for granted. First, let me show you my supplies. This is a wreath that I made several years ago. It's very plain and I want to make something a little more complicated today. I'm using fake plants and foliage today that I bought from Hobby Lobby, but if you prefer to make your wreath out of real evergreens or real plants that you have, feel free to do so. I just want this wreath to last a long time and to be something I can use from year to year, which is why I made the choice to create it out of fake greenery. You can buy a base for your wreath at any art supply store, but I prefer to make one out of this thick wire that I bought at a hobby shop. You can use floral tape to secure your wire if you like, although I prefer to just twist the wire around until it sort of secures itself. If you're using any kind of wire, you'll probably need to buy a special pair of wire cutters, otherwise you'll destroy your scissors. But if you're using any kind of wire cutters at all, be very careful that you don't cut your fingers by mistake. I don't really have a clear plan for this wreath. I'm just sort of going to add the greenery along the sides wherever I think it looks pretty, and I'm going to try to alternate between my boxwood and my evergreens and my roses. You'll see as I go around. You'll notice that I'm laying the greenery all facing the same direction. That will help the wreath have a consistent shape and also help everything to lay nicely along it. I will be using hot glue later on when I add the rose hips and the acorns. If you're using a hot glue gun, be careful not to burn yourself, and ask for help if you need it. If you celebrate Christmas, you might have a wreath hanging on your front door. You probably have a Christmas tree, real or fake, standing somewhere in your house. If you attend church, you might have been lighting candles in an Advent wreath. But have you ever wondered why people make wreaths, or why we bring evergreens into our homes during the winter? It's impossible to know how long people have been making wreaths. If you've seen any statues from ancient Greece or Rome, they might have been wearing a crown of leaves on their head, a kind of wreath made from laurel leaves to crown someone who was victorious in a competition like the Olympic Games, or someone who had made a great conquest in war. Wreaths of flowers were worn at feasts and celebrations and at weddings. Priests wore them when they performed ceremonies honoring their gods. The plants and flowers used for these wreaths had their own special meaning. The ancient Greeks often used laurel because of a myth about Apollo, the god of the sun. It's said that Apollo once fell in love with a nymph called Daphne, but when he tried to make his feelings known to her, she ran from him. Apollo chased her, and because she did not love him, she begged her father, the river god, for help. So Daphne's father transformed her into a laurel tree. When Apollo finally found her, she was no longer a woman, but a tree. Even then, he still loved her, so he wove a crown of laurel leaves and wore it from then on. As the centuries passed, people kept making wreaths and garlands to mark the changing seasons. During the autumn, they made wreaths of grain, nuts, and fruit to show the bounty of the harvest and bring good luck. When the weather turned cold, wreaths were made from what greenery remained in the depths of winter, evergreen trees. In England, people still celebrate the return of spring on May Day, where young men and women wear crowns of flowers. Wreaths and garlands also marked the seasons of life. People once wore wreaths at their weddings, and in some cultures, they still do. The flowers were thought to ward off evil spirits and bad luck. Funeral wreaths were made to honor the dead, perhaps made from rosemary, which symbolizes remembrance, or lilies, which symbolize renewal. We don't know when the first Christmas wreath was made. As far back as the 1500s, people in Eastern Europe and Germany were bringing evergreens into their home for Christmas. Evergreen branches brought life and greenery and good smells into a home during the darkest, coldest months of the year. The shape of the wreath has meaning too. A circle has no end. It's a symbol of eternity or perfection. In the 1800s, a German pastor named Johann Heinrich Wichern made a wreath to help the children in his school count down the days until Christmas. Every day until Christmas, he lit a candle. This tradition eventually became the Advent wreath. Today, the wreath I'm making has boxwood, evergreen, rose hips, and acorns. The boxwood symbolizes constancy or faithfulness. Evergreen symbolizes immortality. Rose hips, which are the fruit made when a rose finishes blooming, symbolize love, or waiting for the fullness of love. The acorn symbolizes strength and fertility. If you want to create your own Christmas wreath, feel free to use any greenery or plants that you choose. But sometimes it's fun to think about the old symbolism that lies behind the things we make. If you're interested in learning more about the symbolism of plants and flowers, just Google language of flowers or Victorian language of flowers, and you'll find lots of articles that will tell you everything you want to know. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year.